Okay, gentlemen, a ton of news seemed to break this week. It was a very newsy week in the NFL. We got C-Rob here, so Frank, I figure we'll make him work extra hard. Let's run through some of these stories that are out there, not the least of which is Lloyd Howell Jr. stepping down as the NFL PA director. A lot of conversation we've had on the show about everything that went down. What's sort of the league reaction right now to what is happening?
I hate to say it, but I think that the league for a long time has felt like the union has been a mess. And this, at least, when you talk to people who've been critical of the league on the NFL side of the fence, this doesn't change anything. If anything, it proves their point that they've always felt like the union leadership, even going back to the final years of DeMaurice Smith, was, disconnected at times from the membership, making mistakes. In some cases, felt like it was going through the motion. And then, when Lloyd Howell was elected, the process, the 16 months leading up to his election, was so secretive, in hopes of avoiding leaks. But I talked to a number of people in the league, and then also, people from the union about this. What ended up happening is you avoid scrutiny on the people running for the position, right? When nobody knows the names of the people who are going to be up for a position until 2 days before they're elected, there's not a ton of media scrutiny digging into these people over a long period of time. There's not a lot of time to canvass and go, hey, what's this person all about? Lloyd's coming from Booz Allen. Are there any skeletons in the closet? What do we need to dig into? Are there some strip clubs back there? So when all this fell apart, and then JC Tretter, who is their chief strategy officer, but at the time was the NFLPA president, and he, set up the election process that got Lloyd Howell into, his position, for JC Tretter to also go out the door. Now you basically have the two top people who would steer the league steer the union are now out of the way. And I think there's definitely question across the league, like, how is this going to work out? Where are they going to get an interim now to come and basically get them back on the tracks? And how long is that going to take? Is it going to be 6 months to really get them back where they need to be on the tracks with an executive director who's going to be there for the long term? Is it going to take a year? And the league wants to reopen the CBA. They want to add an 18th game. There are negotiations that have to happen in earnest, at least inside the next year. They were supposed to happen this summer, and they got pushed back. Well, now we know why. It's a mess, and it's not a good look for the union. And I think their next step is far more critical than I think any juncture I've seen, maybe going back to the last CBA. Getting CBAs done, that's the kind of gravity of this decision.
I absolutely. I have nothing to add that you didn't already say. The union's a fiasco. Like, it is in rough shape. I will say this. I need to add this on because it has struck me over the last week. How this story started was a pretty big bombshell that an arbitrator found there was more evidence than not that the NFL colluded against its players to keep guaranteed money down. That's all swept away because the union is such a circus that we've all just forgotten that the NFL got caught with its hand in a cookie jar, that Lamar Jackson was free to talk to everybody, and teams were like, no, Desmond Ridder, we like him. That's all swept away because the union is such a clown car that whole story is just gone. And I just want to bring it up again to say, yes, the NFL probably colluded against its players to keep guaranteed money down. Let's not forget that.
Well, and let's not forget that JC Tretter, like some people thought for a minute he might be the successor. Part of the reason that they are where they are in this situation is because JC Tretter was running his mouth on a podcast, right? Like, so, the amount of missteps by multiple people, you've got to, as a group, this is where I want to try and at least hold the players somewhat accountable here. Start asking yourselves, look around, like, who's in charge of this thing, and what level of empowerment are you giving them, and what level of ownership are players taking? If there's ever been a come to Jesus, look in the mirror and ask yourself who the hell we're voting to represent ourselves sort of question within this union. Players need to be looking at themselves right now, wondering how they got bamboozled by a couple of different people and how they put themselves in this situation.
Well, not only that, I mean, the real true gravity of this situation, beyond the fact that they have to get an executive director in there who's going to be there long term and who's going to, lead them into the next CBA negotiations, is going to, walk the plank on that 18th game. One thing that's in jeopardy here, and this is a really big deal, and I don't think anyone's paid much attention to it. They created a tool, JC Tretter and a former executive, George Atala, created this tool where you had players anonymously getting together in a very strong voice and telling you what they thought of their teams. in multiple layers, right? So the player survey over the last couple of years has been one of the most, I would say, one of the brightest spots that I've seen in the union in maybe decades. And it was powerful, held owners accountable. Owners have not liked it. You know, Woody Johnson, the Jets, hates that survey.
As he should.
But here's the thing. The person who spearheaded that, now when Atala stepped out, you know, of the union and you know, went his own way, Treader was really the guy who held that in his hands. Does that go away now? Have players lost the ability that they had gained over the last 3 years to hold teams accountable for a multitude of different things that don't necessarily have to do with the product on the field? It's everything else surrounding the product and their relationship with those owners. That survey might be gone. I don't know who picks it up. There's a lot of time and effort put into it. With this mess right now, at the very least, I would guess there's a pause for a year where they try to straighten everything else out, and then who picks it up afterward. But that was really J.C. Treader and George Atala's baby. Neither of those men are in the union anymore. So to me, all of the backwash of this, you could have lost an immense, powerful tool that you once had.
That's wild to think of, and I hadn't thought of that at all. Okay, let's get to one other big, huge piece of news right now around the Cincinnati Bengals. Everybody's trying to figure out what's going on with Trey Hendrickson. Obviously, that is a big story. Mike Brown talked a little bit about it, and he made it clear that they're not going to trade him. They're going to try and get it done. I don't know, C-Rob. It just feels like this thing has gotten uglier and uglier, not better and better. And now reports are Trey's not even around anymore. He's gone to Florida. I mean, how does this resolve?
I mean, it, you know, feels a little bit to me like, you know, I remember when, you know, the Ezekiel Elliott deal, he left the country, right? You know, and in the midst of camp, and like, when is this going to get done? And, you know, it felt like it was kind of going in nasty territory. The Bengals are a little bit different because you have an owner who's basically fairly dug in. You have Trey Hendrickson, who's fairly dug in at this stage. Do I think it ultimately gets done? Yeah, I do. I think it comes to the point where if we push and Hendrickson starts to lose game checks, then I think things have to be recalculated on his end, because that's money he's never going to get back. He's not early in his career. He's at the tail end of it. So money lost is not going to be recouped down the line. And the Bengals are not the type of team that say, hey, yeah, you know, you lost 3 game checks or 4 game checks, we'll make that up to you. They're not going to do that. You lose the money to the Bengals, it's gone. It's never coming back. The one wrinkle here, and I know Mike Brown has said they're not trading him, those calls, they're going to get hammered with calls as this drags on. As this gets closer to the season beginning, they're going to get a lot of teams that are going to say, you know, step away from it. Give them to us. You know, we'll take them off your hands. We'll give you something in exchange for it. You know, they're not listening now. It does not necessarily mean that if this, you know, we're still hitting icebergs in late August, early September, they won't start to say, maybe we might, you know, we should just get an asset out of this situation and clear the decks and move forward.
I think of all the contract situations out there, this is the only one where I'm like, this guy's going to miss games. I just, and maybe it's just my distrust of the Bengals and their ownership, but it just seems like, how do they come to an accord? I almost see this like Hassan Reddick last year, where it just dragged on and on and on. He missed a lot of games, came back, it was a shell of what he was. So he had 1 sack all season. So even if Trey Hendrickson signs at the end of September, I don't know that he comes back and is the same Trey Hendrickson we're used to. Like, it's just a mess. And let me ask you, let me flip that on you. Is there another contract situation out there that you're like, ooh, this is really, like, I think of McLaurin, and I think that'll get done, and Juwan Jennings or whatever else is out there. I don't see another one where I'm like, that's the one where if there's a guy who's going to miss games, it's probably going to be Trey Hendrickson.
No, I think you have to look at it not necessarily from the player perspective, which of course that's very important because the player has to have the fortitude to miss games. But you also have to look at it from an ownership perspective. Like, how dug in is an owner? And have we seen owners in the past yielding to, you know, pressurized situations where they don't want to see players lose games? Bengals are, to me, and I know it's hard to say it because they paid Burrow all that money, right? Paid Joe Burrow. They paid Jamar Chase. They paid T. Higgins. Well, to me, yeah, they did pay those guys, which that leads me to believe there's even more motivation to not pay Trey Hendrickson because they're already, feeling squeezed by doling out a massive amount of money on 3 players on offense. So I don't think there's any other contract situation out there where there's a player more likely to miss games than Hendrickson. Although I will say it's difficult on his end. As I said before, you're sitting there and you're going,
right.
I'm not 25, right? Like I'm on the wrong
money
side
that's
of
lost.
30.
Like, you're just giving away money at that point. I get it.
Yeah. And he'll never recoup that. He won't once he loses.
Right. Correct.
C-Rob, what do you think it would take? What's the fair trade market value for Trey Hendrickson right now?
Man, that's a really good question. I think it depends on the team, right? That would come and get him. I would say, I want to say a team's not going to give up a first round, pick for a player like that. And nowadays I feel like in general, the trade market is pretty soft when you go to surrender assets, probably a second and maybe some other picks, some later round picks involved. I just think teams are really, really going to have a hard time giving up a first round pick unless they know we're a pass rusher away from being squarely in a Super Bowl window the next 2 seasons. Because really, realistically, I think that's what you're signing Trey Hendrickson up for, right? Probably 2 years. If you're lucky, maybe you get a third, but really it's probably a 2-year window. Hard to give up a first for a guy in a 2-year window.
Yeah, absolutely. Hassan Reddick went for a third. That's what I was thinking. Like Hassan Reddick, Trey Hendrickson. Hendrickson's probably a little better, but I was
definitely a better
assuming
player. Yeah.
You think so? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
well,
I
mean,
think he is.
Reddick was really good too until last year. So yeah, I could see. Yeah, not a first, but yeah, if some team. And why wouldn't the Bengals do it at that point? Like I don't know. Like I get it. Like your bad defense isn't better without Trey Hendrickson, but if this thing is just a stalemate, like
because
you can.
Because you'd have to. I mean. Their defense at this point, the offense, go watch Quarterback on Netflix and you just sit there and you're like, my God, Burrow must have been losing his mind. Because, you're putting up 30, 40 points.
The best,
and you can't...
Charles, I just wrote this in the Bengals preview. He had literally, by some statistical measures, the greatest season ever for a quarterback who didn't make the playoffs. Like, an unbelievable season. He didn't make the playoffs. I just wonder, I keep wondering. I know this is an NBA thing and not an NFL thing, but I wonder if at some point Joe Burrow's like, I'm out, man. Like, I don't want to be with this organization anymore. Like, that's how bad I think it could get. If they miss the playoffs again and he throws another 41 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, I'd be like, man, what am I doing here?
Well, and not only that, like, again, watching the quarterback series on Netflix, he was deeply bothered by what was going on. Like you could see that losing really at the beginning of the season, it really did bother him. And he also is not afraid. I don't think he's afraid to speak his mind. Like he'll come out and he'll say things.
He said, you got to sign T. Higgins. Go sign T. Higgins. That's what was him. Like,
And I don't think it's out of the question that if this happens again, that Joe Burrow's not sitting there staring and going, he even kind of talked about, hey, you think you're going to play so long and then all of a sudden you're in year 5. And so he kind of senses a clock too already at this stage in his career. It's hard to believe if they go out and score 30, 40 points a game regularly and once again miss the playoffs. I just can't see Joe Burrow not going to ownership and saying, you need to attack fixing this defense in the offseason, spending money on the defense in the offseason and getting us there. Or else we need to figure something else out because I can't go through this.
Well, what I know is that it's going to be a wild summer to watch all of it. C-Rob, we're going to let you get back to your training camp duties. Frank and I are going to figure out, floor and ceiling for some teams. Travel safe, my friend. That's all we ask so that you can keep giving us the insights. And we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back and give you the floor and the ceiling on some huge names in the NFL this season.